In this video, we're going to go behind the scenes on the visual effects breakdown of Iron Man. This is the final part in the 5-part series. We're covering the F-22 Raptor dogfight. Throughout this video, we're going to dig deep into deconstructing the visual effects process for the film from the unique perspective of a visual effects supervisor. We'll discuss the work involved, the techniques, the technology, the process, all the key sequences of the film, and how all of them were created. I'm Alan McKay, I'm a visual effects supervisor in Hollywood. I've been working in the industry for 25 years at studios like Industrial Light and Magic and dozens of other leading visual effects studios. On projects like Game of Thrones, Transformers, Star Trek, Superman, Avengers Endgame, my goal is to teach artists and creators the skills and knowledge to build a successful career in the creative industry, as well as the business side of being an artist. This is part 1 of a 5-part video series. Each day this week I'll be reviewing a new sequence from the movie, as well as a compilation of the effects at the end of the week. The goal is simply to break down and explain the shots and the challenges for each of these sequences, and share my thoughts as a visual effects supervisor on how I would approach a lot of these. Typically we're handed the script, and we got to break down exactly what we need to do and allocate the right studios and the right people to each of these sequences. So this is an opportunity for me to be able to break down my thoughts on how I would approach a lot of these sequences and also discuss a lot of what's involved in the creative process. Finally, if there's a particular movie that you want to see covered in the upcoming visual effects breakdowns, let me know, leave a comment below, as well as any questions that maybe weren't covered here. I'm happy to answer those as well. So, let's get started. Okay, let's talk about the F-22 Raptor sequence. So, pretty much entirely 3D. There is going to be some shots where I guarantee a small crew of people is going to go off and film a bunch of stuff in the sky, try to get, based on any animatics, previs, storyboarding they have, some cool kind of shots that work a little bit for the type of stuff they need. And then, so we'll just call this IRL, but basically they're shooting background plates. So technical term would be BG plates. And so you do a, man, I can't draw. What's wrong with me? Plates. So BG plates shoot would be type 1. And then from there, you would also have just straight up matte painting. And that, like I said, would be a pano. So a lot of the time, if it's up in the air, it'll just be a spherical set of clouds, maybe a few cards of clouds, stuff like that. And then it's going to be matte plus 3D, and that's just going to be, like I said, afterburn, where you'll have like some cool puffy clouds. I think the best video on my YouTube channel is just an old tutorial on how to make clouds. I'm going to be making a new one for Houdini and Max pretty soon, just to update it, because it's been about 15, I don't know, yeah, been a long time since I made that tutorial. And then there might be occasionally some that are entirely just 3D, but that would be the general mix. The main thing is to switch it up. You're constantly going back and forth. And then you're also going to do an actual talent shoot. And that's going to be typically whenever you have someone in frame, reacting, looking over their shoulder, stuff like that. So you actually want to have some actor doing all that stuff, and they're shooting all that on the soundstage. And everything else typically is then built around that. So to go through this, like this is a good example of like a, you know, of the talent. You could do these in 3D, but in this case, I'd imagine you're just sitting in there. Like I was in a soundstage with Richard Branson for Superman when he was flying the spaceship that gets, whatever happens to it, I can't even remember anymore. But you know, you basically have them sitting in a cockpit doing their thing, and then you would add in everything else that's all green screen. So you got shots like this. I'd imagine that's all digital. You'd have a matte painting in the background for some stuff, but I think that's all 3D. That there is real. Pretty confident it's real. Looks real there, it looks 3D there. So I think this is 3D. So that's another 3D one with, you know, background plate. It's Panther. Again, the screen schmutz and everything is really good. So that's all 3D, looks good. And again, like, continuity is really important. Obviously, this is all Orphanage, again. And that's what I mean, like, I felt like Orphanage were doing way more ambitious shots. I think, like, the fire sims that Scanline were doing were probably the most ambitious thing in this film, in my opinion. ILM stuff is ambitious in the sense that it's a huge chunk of the film, and it's quite realistic, but I'm just saying in terms of, like, effects, going for 3D solutions, I feel like they were definitely going more out of their comfort zone in that area. But, you know, ILM stuff in this is great, I really love it. But you can see it's all dirtied up, you know, keeping that continuity, which is really good. So that's all 3D. That is all footage. Not footage, sorry, I mean, basically a matte painting of clouds that they've just gotten pictures of and smashed them together. That was really good. That's all 3D again. So it's just, again, like, stuff like this is just clusters of blobs. It's kind of like what I was saying about my tutorial, like the same kind of approach. You're just doing clusters of the stuff, pockets of the stuff all adding up. I guarantee you render times in this stuff would have been like 8 hours a frame or 20 hours a frame, something ridiculous. Then he's breaking the sound barrier. Again, it's to stall particles. I don't know why the sun kind of flares out there, but it looks cool. But yeah, it's all 3D. And I'd say the decision to go 3D for some of these shots is more to do with freedom with the camera, but also the fact that in this case the camera is actually pulling back, so there needs to be new elements being introduced, so it just makes sense to do that. Again, all 3D afterburn, talent shot. I'd assume 3D. Anyway, you get the idea. Like, I won't spend too long on this stuff, but it's, like I said, it's those four things of, like, 2D, 3D, 3D, footage, and then 2D. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those in combination, and then talent, is basically how you pull this off, and kind of alternating based on the needs of each shot. Like, you would do an animatic and then make the decision about, like, what's the best approach, but it works, and there's more sparks. So obviously these are all flares, chaffs, and I think the explosions are all just footage. Yeah, definitely there, but even in the beginning as well. That's all footage, talent in the foreground, 2D footage for all the clouds and background as well. I imagine all this is pretty much 3D and then 2D for like a Panther, just so that way you've got freedom, because the camera's moving around a lot. You don't want that freedom. That's all 3D. You get the idea. I won't spend much time on this, but yeah, I mean, it's good to understand that stuff, because I think most of the time it's about understanding what your options are. It's not about making, like, everything 3D or everything 2D. It's about making the right decisions in the right spots. That's really cool. I'd say that's all afterburn. Again, so it's just 3D particles, but it looks really neat. Kind of going through this pretty quick, but looking back in hindsight, that's, again, I'd imagine a 3D matte painting projected onto geometry. Like I said, like Iron Man 1, looking back in hindsight, the visual effects aren't, like, they're great. Like, the visual effects are great, but in terms of, like, what we're used to now, where they're really complicated, these are more about the challenge being pulling this stuff off. Whereas these days, this stuff it's a given. It's more about, like, what else can we do? How do we push the envelope? Whereas back then, it was about, like, how do we make it acceptable? Because when you're looking at some of the other movies coming out at the time, most of them are probably not hitting the bar that they're trying to go for. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't seen the 4 previous videos yet, make sure to check them out in the description below. Now, this was an absolute pleasure to create this video series for you, and each week I hope to be releasing a new series diving deep into the production process for these visual effects films. Now, if there is any particular film that you want to see a visual effects breakdown on, let me know in the comments. Okay, so next time I'm going to be covering Army of the Dead and all the major visual effects sequences in that film, including the big opening sequence with airstriking all of Las Vegas, as well as the big nuclear bomb at the end, and all the zombie creature effects, Valentine the tiger, all the other different effects throughout the film as well, and also replacing Tig Notaro. So I'm really excited for that one. You guys voted for that. Check out the link in my Instagram. Each week I'll be running a poll where you can vote for what films you want to see, and I'm really excited to cover Army of the Dead next. And like I said, in the meantime, check out the playlist. I've got links to all of the previous visual effects breakdowns I've done for Venom, for Avengers Endgame, for Spider-Man Far From Home, and so many others. So I'm really excited for next week. I'll be back then. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to be posting a visual effects montage of all the visual effects and behind the scenes footage of Iron Man, and then I'll be jumping on Monday with Army of the Dead. Thanks for watching.